Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Matt with Texas Toast Guitars. Welcome back to another Shop Talk video brought to you by me, inspired by Joy and Chad Wright. And today I'm going to get a little salty. One, because you guys seem to like it when I do that. And two, I'm tired of having to make this video, but the stuff that I'm going to talk about seems to be things that people often forget. They blow right past it. And I'm going to talk to you about sanding. Everybody thinks they know how to sand. It seems to me like it should be a no-brainer, but I see a lot of these mistakes over and over and over again. So I want you guys to pay close attention to this. Don't fight me on it, because you're going to lose. Okay? It's just that simple. I'm going to tell you guys some no-brainer stuff, and if you follow these no-brainer things, then your sanding is going to turn out great, okay? Don't worry, I'll tell you the things that people want to fight me on, okay? So I've got a bunch of these level 1 bodies that I'm working on. They're just about ready to have the necks glued in. They're all ready to be sanded to 220. So here, this brings me to my first point. Want to know how I know that all of these guitars are ready to be sanded to 220? Because I wrote 150 on all of them. So, I don't even know if you guys can see it. It's right there. I wrote 150 on all the guitar bodies. So, point number one. Once you're done with a grit, write on the guitar what the last grit that you used was, okay? So that way, if like, I don't know, let's say Jimmy comes over and he says, hey Matt, let's go over to Dave's Hot Chicken for lunch. I don't have to remember where I was. And more importantly, I don't assume that I got all of them and skip a grit, okay? That brings me to number 2. You gotta go through all the grits, okay? So generally, we start with 80 or 100. Now, in the case of when we get stuff from Steve that's maple, like here's the level 2, this maple top, there's a bunch of CNC lines in here. We actually start with 60 on that to kind of get rid of the majority of those CNC tool marks, okay? So you got to get rid of all of the tool marks, and you got to use just aggressive enough abrasive paper to get rid of what you're trying to get rid of. So in the case of trying to get rid of tool path marks, machine marks in maple, which is harder than mahogany, we start with 60 grit, okay? So then we go to 80 grit to get rid of the 60 grit scratches, and 100 grit to get rid of the 80 grit scratches, and 150 to get rid of the 100, and 220 to get rid of the 150, etc., etc. Okay? So you got to go through all the grits. Now I'm not saying start with 35 grit and go to 6,000 grit, but start with the least aggressive grit abrasive that will do what you want to do. But don't start with 220, okay? Okay, so that brings us to point number 3. Make sure you're actually removing what you want to remove and not leaving what you don't want to leave. So, like I said, on this one, I start with 60 grit, and I go through all the grits. Now, one of the things that I like to do is make sure that I get rid of all the stuff I'm trying to get rid of with the least aggressive abrasive I can use. And one of the ways that I do that is I put witness marks on the guitar, just like this, okay? If I put a pencil mark on all the way around the guitar, and I sand off the pencil mark, and I pay close attention to those areas that seem to always be forgotten, if I put a witness mark on there and sand it off with whatever abrasive grit I happen to be using, I can be reasonably sure that I have sanded the whole thing. Now, if you can imagine, if you put pencil marks on on something that's loaded with CNC tool path, grinder bit marks, and start with 220, you're never going to get it off. So you got to go back, use the abrasive that is going to actually do what you want to do. And then as you're going, make sure you get rid of all the stuff that you put on there before. So I see this a lot. Guys will show up with a guitar that's ready. They're getting ready for paint, and they've got all the way to 220, and I see a great big 60 grit scratch right down the side. You got to get rid of that stuff. So when you're going by with your pencil, kind of get in there and, you know, like actually get in and see, because if you get the pencil lead, the graphite, if you will, the pencil lead, if you will, the graphite, if you must, get that in those scratches. By the time you get rid of all that graphite, you're down to where you need to be and go to the next grit. Now, sometimes you can like go, well, I'm not going to get that with 60. I'm going to get the rest of it with 80. Okay, I gotcha. But yeah, give yourself some witness marks here, and make sure to get it in all the little areas that you always miss. Once you do this a couple times, you'll be like, oh, you know what? I always miss this part right here, so I'm gonna mark up extra right there. And don't worry, the sandpaper will take off the graphite. Okay. So that brings me to point number 4. Just about everybody tries to save money on sandpaper by using it past its actual past when it stops cutting. Okay, so let's say okay, so I've got a disc on this little pad here. This is 60 or 80. It doesn't really matter, but they grind on something, and the paper's dead. It's still got coarse bumps, but they're not sharp anymore. They're not doing anything. So it feels like they're doing something because the paper still kind of feels like it's sharp, but it's not. So you got to change the paper. So like I've got 4 or 5 level 1 bodies here. Like I say, I'm ready to do 220 on all of them. I'm not going to be able to get all of them with one sheet of 220. I'll probably go through 2 or 3. And you will save yourself time. You will save yourself dollars by using sandpaper. How many times I got to say it, gang? Using sandpaper like somebody else is paying for it, okay? Here's another thing. This is kind of point number 4.1. Here's something that people always bellyache to me about. If you use 80 grit and it's dull, it doesn't all of a sudden become a finer grit sandpaper. The internet blew up at me the first time I said this. Well, you're using the wrong paper. No, I'm not. You're just stupid. Just stop doing it, okay? Sandpaper doesn't go from like a really aggressive grit to a finer grit just the more you use it. That's just asinine, okay? So don't even try to tell me, try this paper, try that paper. I've tried all that stuff, okay? Nothing, it's a fallacy that sandpaper that gets, that isn't sharp anymore, that gets dull, all of a sudden is better to be, it's bullcrap, okay? I'm gonna throw this at the camera. Okay. Let's see. I think that probably is going to cover all of that stuff, you guys. Sanding is something that is not hard. Oh, wait, I do have one other thing that I'm going to have to move the camera to do this, though. Okay, one thing that we want to talk about is the sander that you're using. This has dead paper on it. I can tell just by looking at it, it's dead. Okay, so when you're using the sander, the weight of the sander is really about all that the pressure. You don't need to really jam down on it. Just let the sander kind of do the work, okay? The weight of the sander is probably enough. If you want to put a little pressure on it, you can. But especially when we're doing 220, we're not trying to reshape anything. We're just trying to remove scratches and polish the wood a little bit. So let the sander do the work and just kind of guide it around until all your graphite marks are gone. Now the Challenger has a hard edge here. I don't want to round that over. I want to keep that. I'll just break that corner off by hand later. Some areas that seem to be very tricky to get are this horn right here. Pay close attention to not like falling off of that horn. The other key tricky spot is right here where you kind of run out of room. The sander is, like right here, the sander has plenty of stuff to stay stable on. When you get to, you can fall into the control cavity. You want to pay real close attention to that. Sometimes you can go over and get all of this, but yeah, you don't want to fall over it and grind into that. The other thing is, if you are new to this, start with the sander on the piece, turn the sander on, then stop the sander before you pick it up. The reason is because here's how most people pick up the sander, like this. And if they do that, they're going to grind a crescent into the piece they're trying to sand with the sander. You will notice that we have, getting covered up with sanding dust sucks. And I've yet to meet someone who actually does like sanding. There's a lot of people who say they love it, but they're full of crap. Here, the comment section is already going to go nuts when I say that. Some jerk off will say, "Oh, I love sanding." So one of the things that is kind of rotten about sanding is crap gets everywhere. So if you can afford the Festool sanders, those are probably the best. If you want the next best thing, I like these little DeWalt guys, and a piece of, this is dishwasher drain hose, and it goes right into the back of it there. Hook that up to your vacuum, and you will get most of the dust that will just fill the air with its dusty goodness, dusty rottenness, okay? The other thing is the flat part should be easy, okay? This curve part is usually tricky. I like to, the edge part is usually tricky. I generally will let that go until I get to the 150 grit stage, and I'll do it with 150 with the hand sander. If your guitar has a bunch of areas that you can't get with a machine, I'm going to tell you right now, change the design, because getting stuff with the palm sander is way easier than having to do it all by hand, okay? Keep in mind that there's going to be some things that you just have to do by hand. One of those things is like reestablishing your roundover. You know, you can probably do some of it with the palm sander, but you'd be better off to do that by hand, okay? So anyway, gang, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Okay, so sanding, it's not tricky, it's not difficult, but it is a skilled operation, and you're not born with the innate ability to just jump right in and start grinding wood smooth and have it look right. It takes a little bit of practice, okay? Take your time and do it right, and you will not be disappointed. Your patience will be rewarded. All right, guys, so until next time, this is Matt at Texas Toast reminding you that if you're so smart, start your own YouTube channel. That's what I did. If you got anything from this video, buy a t-shirt, buy a mug, use our Teespring link there, and get yourself some TTG swag. And have a great week, everybody. We will see you next time.